All right. Good morning. With the help of Hashem, we are learning Yerushalmi Brachas Perek Tes Halacha Beis and Halacha Gimel. We are learning Daf Tzadik Aleph. We left off on Daf Tzadik Aleph, Amid Aleph, 3 lines from the top of the Amid, and we're going to begin continuing after we discussed about the depth to which rain is absorbed. We're going to have Behemshach Lozeh, various related teachings. The Gemara will give also examples of good news that requires the bracha of Hatoy v'Hametiv, the bracha in which we acknowledge that God is good and He does good. And we're going to learn one approach in the Gemara here, as we also learned in the Bavli, of when exactly do we make a Shachiyanu versus when do we make the Hatoiv Umetiv. That will more or less conclude Mishnah Beis, and Mishnah Gimel, which begins on Daf Tzaddik Aleph Amud Aleph, will teach us more laws regarding the blessings that we have to make, both over happy occasions and over what we experience to be sad occasions. We're going to have a unique shita in the Yerushalmi that holds that one makes a bracha over a hechsher mitzvah. When one builds a sukkah, according to the Yerushalmi, you make a bracha. But when you write a mezuzah, when you write the tefillin, the lulav, v'chuli, in other words, even though you're not doing the mitzvah proper, but even the hechsher mitzvah also demands a bracha. And we will also have something unique in the Yerushalmi, which will be a machloikes regarding when do we make birchas ha-mitzvahs. So in the Bavli, we have the sheet of Rabbi Yechanan, as we'll learn here also, that a bracha, birchas ha-mitzvahs, as a rule, with exceptions, have to be made oiver la'asiyasim. Oiver means koidem la'asiyasim. And however, we're going to have what's unique over here, Shitas Rav Huna, that the birchas ha-mitzvahs need to be made not prior, not over la'asiyasim, but b'shas asiyasim, while they're being performed, as we'll explain the reason behind Rav Huna, Chevra, and much more. Let's start. Again, Tzadik Aleph, Amid Aleph, 3 lines from the top of the Amid. The Gemara continues, again, Behemshach, to what we just learned about the depth into which the rain is absorbed in the ground. Says the Gemara that Rabbi Hanina Bar Ika says in the name of Rav Yehuda Shor Shechita, which is quite amazing, the roots of wheat stalks, Boikin Ba'aretz, they break through the soil. You know how deep, at times, even up to 50 amas. Now, obviously, the shaila, the question that we'll have with all of this is that, as we mentioned, rain is needed for things to grow. How deep does the rain grow in the ground? What did we learn? 3 tfachim or less. And here we're beginning by telling us, the Gemara, the Chazal is telling us that the roots of the wheat go into the ground 50 amas. Shorshe te'ena rakim, soft roots of date palms, boikin, they break through batsur. They even, says the Pnei Moshe, they even are able to break through soil even when it's as hard as rock. In other words, since the roots are very soft, it allows themselves to insinuate themselves through teeny cracks and openings, even though the ground is very hard, even if it's a rocky ground. Furthermore, says the Gemara, Tani, we learned in a Braisa, Rabbi Shmuel ben Elazar Omer, Ein ha'aretz shoyse ela lefi chisumam, that the ground drinks the water only in accordance to its chisuma, to its hardness, meaning that if the earth is very hard, as we just learned before, the rain is unable to penetrate that deep. So now we have a shaila. In other words, when we are confirming that how deep does the rain go, it depends on the hardness of the ground. The harder, the less it goes, which is quite amazing, because we just said that the roots, even if they're soft, are more substantial than water. No, the roots of the te'ena, they go all the way down. The roots of the chita goes down to 50 amas. So if, based on that premise, that the roots of certain grains, certain trees, go very, very deep, rain doesn't go that deep. For trees to grow, they have to be nourished also by water. So what water is nourishing those deep roots? Whether the Gemara is speaking physically, whether the Gemara is speaking about something deeper, it's definitely deeper. So the Gemara is mefir tois mitakashi. Im came mayasu shorshe charuv, mayasu shorshe shikma. In other words, you're telling me that these roots go very deep, and these trees really go very deep. The rain, b'chlal, doesn't go that deep. So how do the trees survive? That's the Gemara's kash. And as we just learned, this concept, as we explained it to Sarusa de la Ela, Sarusa de la Sata, that when rain falls from above, there's also waters from the Tohoim that goes up. That's what the Gemara is getting. So Amar Rabbi Chanina, Achas l'shloishim yoim, once in 30 days. Tohoim oila, the waters that are in the core of the earth, they rise. No, they don't rise all the way to the top. They would flood the world. But it does bring moisture up, and it brings moisture further up to the point, umashka oisa. So there's a certain type of nourishment that is coming from out there, right? From the rain above. And then there is a very a deeper type of nourishment that you might not see it, but it's coming from within. This is very deep. And this is substantiated by a pasuk in Yeshayahu, where the Torah says, Ani Hashem, I God, noitzra, I guard, liragoyim ashkeno. And at times, at certain moments, I will water it. In other words, guarding is something that happens the whole time. The watering, the inner nourishment comes liragoyim. What's liragoyim? Rabbi says once in 30 days. And really, this is a very deep concept. So the whole sheet of Chabad is that you can't rely on the moon of the tzaddik. You have to do your own work, which is much more difficult. But within every person, there is the potential of all of the nourishment that you need. You have to just bring it up. Says the Gemara Amar Ab Zeira. Plenty time we learned over there. Over there means in Bavel. And over there, they had the following brayso that if a person sees a period of inexpensive goods that are coming into the world, similarly, if you see an era of plenty that comes into the world, really one is connected to the other, and or it's all connected. Nahar maspik lemedina, if you see a river that is providing for an entire region, in other words, you are living in a moment where it's not only good for you, it's good for everyone. So what bracha do you make? Omer baruch hatoiva hametiv. The bracha is that you, God, you are good and you do good. Now, let's go into the Pnei Moshe. You make the hatoiva hametiv because, I'm just reading the Pnei Moshe 10 lines from the top. Now, we're going to follow this approach throughout the Sugya, even though we're going to get tripped up soon. In the Bavli Befedish, we have that concept. Shechiyanu is something that you make when it's good only for you. Hatoiva meitiv is when something is good for you and good for others. We're going to learn the Yerushalmi the same way, even though there'll be a kasha on this approach, but so learns the Pnei Moshe. And that's the whole point. And in other words, when there's a nahar that's giving sustenance, not just to you, to the whole Medina. So then you make a hatoiva meitiv. Omru loy meis aviv. If a person was notified, God forbid, that his father passed away, so first he has to make, as we learned in the Mishnah, the bracha that you make for Besuras Ra'os, Baruch Dayan Ha'emes. Together with that, if not only did the person find out that meis, but he also found out V'hoirishai. V'hoirishai means that the father left physical things that are being bequeathed to him, and now here the Pnei Moshe has to add, look inside the last Pnei Moshe before the Mishnah, not only to him, we're speaking about someone who has a sibling. So in Yerusha is going to him and to others, because the Pnei Moshe is learning, that's the pshat over here like we have on the Bavli. Hatoiva hametiv you can only make if it's good for you and for others. In other words, if the person is the sole Yoirish, according to the Pnei Moshe, even according to the Yerushalmi, what bracha would you make? A shechiyan. You make hatoiva hametiv because, like he says, the Pnei Moshe, yesh oid yoirish she yoirish imay. So then oime baruch hatoiva hametiv. Now you make both brachas. In other words, you make first dayan ha'emes. It's not a stira, and you make the hatoiva hametiv. And according to this approach, if a person is the sole yoirish hadayin ha'emes, and you make a shechiyanu. Because both things you're experiencing. You're experiencing the B'sura Ra, and you're also having the experience of the B'sura Teva. Okay, moving on to the next Mishnah. Says the Mishnah, Bana Bayis Chodesh. Bana means you built. The Mefarshim say that it doesn't only mean to build, it means to buy. And not only does it mean to buy Chodesh, we'll have in the Gemara later, not even Chodesh. What happens mostly in America, you can buy a used home. All of that will unpackage this. But the words of the Mishnah is you built a Bayis Chodesh. Or, and V'kana Kelim Chodashim, you purchase new garments. Obviously, we're not speaking about a purchase that you are habituated in doing. Today we're living in a world in plenty that people buy a suit very often. People buy new garments very often. We're not talking about that. We're talking about a type of purchase that is very unusual. And what do? They make the bracha, Baruch, Shechiyanu, Shechiyanu. The words are Shehigiyanu Lizman Hazeh. It's interesting. We don't say the Shechiyanu, but the Mishnah writes the ending words of the purchase. There's another important thing over here that the Mishnah, Vlad, doesn't say that you make the bracha when you move in. The Mishnah doesn't say that you make the bracha when you wear it. The Mishnah says you make the bracha when you build it or when you buy it. And that's indeed the way it is. Because the joy that a person experiences is the joy of the buy. More than that, if the Shechiyanu would only come when you move in, then when would you make the bracha? By was when you are allowed to move in. But that's not the way it works. It's not about you moving in. Even though you're not moving in yet, you can't move in yet, you don't have a mezuzah yet. You're making the bracha because you bought it. And it's important to know this because let's go to the 3 weeks, Lamashal, right? Where we don't buy, even for Shabbos, we don't buy Shechiyanu clothing. It's not that you don't wear Shechiyanu clothing. You don't buy. People say, no, let me buy now. I'll wear it after. No. The simcha is not only because you're wearing it. The simcha is when you're buying it. And if you don't relate to it, ask your wife. When does she feel the joy? When you buy it. Okay, now, weiter. Mevarech al hara, another rule in the Mishnah, which is a very important rule. Mevarech al hara me'ein hatoiva, va'al hatoiva me'ein hara. The meaning of this Mishnah is that when a person will experience something, that right now it's good, but it might bring to bad. Right now it's bad, it might bring to good. And you know what might be. And what might be is highly likely. You don't make the bracha for what will be, you make the bracha for what is right now. The mashal that the Gemara gives in Bavli, I'm giving you of something which is bad, which is going to be good, is if there's a big flood in your field. So the produce of this year got inundated, got lost. Certain types of floods brings certain types of minerals to the field. It does something that for later, the field is good. You make the dain ha'emes. You make the bracha for the psuros rois. The other example of something good that might be bad, when a person finds a lost article. So the law of the land then was if you find a lost article, you have to give it to the government. Who gave it to the government? Very few people. You kept it. What do you make? You make a shechiyanu. If it's good for you and for others, you make a hatoiva hametiv. If the government will find out that you found the lost article, not only will they confiscate it from you, they're going to give you a fine because you didn't tell the government. You know that. Doesn't matter. Even though you know it might be bad, these brachas are not made for what will be. You have to make a bracha for what is right now. This is a very important rule. We call it Belashon Hakasav Ba'asher Hu Sham. Right, the words that Hashem said regarding Yishmael. When the miracle happened, right? We read this on Rosh Hashanah, and the Malachim told the Eibusher, why are you saving Yishmael? His descendants will be killing the Bnei Yisrael. God says, I know that. But right now, is he a tzaddik or a rasha? Right then he was a baby. Ba'asher usham. You make a bracha, in other words, live in what is. Not because you're blind to what will be. But if not, who can live? At the end, we're going to die. So what does that mean? We should never celebrate? No, right now is good. Celebrate. That was a mashal of, I think, Rabbi Gamliel to the heretic. Okay, let's go right. Another rule when it comes to brachas. And now we're going from a bracha to a tefillah. So just like when you make a bracha, you don't make it for what will be, you make for what is. When you pray, you never pray for the past. But don't focus on the future, don't focus on the past. What will be the example? If a person is shouting out to God for something that already happened, so that's called a tefillah shav. You're doing it in vain. For example, and and now we know that from the beginning, the type of egg that impregnated the sperm that impregnated the egg is either a Y or an X. That's it. So once the woman is pregnant, davening for a change is tefillah shav. It happened already. Another example, a person is coming from a trip, and when he enters the city, he hears he hears sounds of screaming. And it's screaming in someone's home, there's a calamity. He doesn't know yet which home it is. So he says, that this should not be coming from my house. It happened already. The screaming is happening already. Another example, no, but why not? Doesn't matter. When the screaming is happening, you can tell yourself, I hope it's not coming from my house. A person can have that hope. We're not speaking about what you hope. Of course, we're speaking about davening to God. You're davening. What are you davening? It happened. Okay. Says the Gemara, referring back to the beginning of the mission, that Bana Bais Chadash or the Kana Kalim Chadash. So the Mishnah says you make a Shehachiyanu. So says the Gemara, now we emphasize when we learn the Mishnah that Bana doesn't only mean Bana. Bana means also if you purchase. Right? But you might think that when do you make a Shehachiyanu if you purchase a new home? Says the Gemara, it's not true. It doesn't have to be that way. It doesn't have to be mamish new, even if they are used. If you never owned it before, guys, again, we're speaking about something that is for you considered significant. We're not speaking about someone who buys a torn pair of socks. We're not talking about that. The point is that I'm going to go to a home. I know garments, because of the abundance, people that I know don't buy used garments. You buy new garments. In those days, people bought used garments. It was a big deal, garments. We didn't have machinery that made it. It was a big thing. But let's speak about a home. It's most people that I know didn't buy a brand new home. They bought a used home. Right? And you have no mortgage. And I want you to know that in the later Poskim, Rabbi Eliyashiv claimed that if you have to pay a mortgage, you don't make a shechiyanu. You make a shechiyanu after 30 years if you live. After you keep on refinancing it, when you give the last payment, you make a shechiyanu. Because until then, you didn't buy. The Tzitz Eliezer says no. It says it doesn't work that way. That in this society, when you purchase the home, even though you owe your life to the banks, this is a very important machlokes. I can say from the experience that I had that it's a big simcha when you buy a home. You finally bought a home. You owe money. You don't think about that. That's later. The mortgage is due in 2 weeks. Right now, you own a home. I think the Behem Shechlozeh says the Gemara right. Now, here is where we get tripped up. Okay, we explained that the Pnei Moshe learns in the Yerushalmi, like we have the Fedish and the Bavli, that the difference between Shehachiyanu and Atoivu Meitiv is if it's only good for you, Shehachiyanu. If it's good for you and for others, you make a Hatoiva HaMeitiv. Now let's see how that will work. Says the Gemara, Rabbi Yaakov bar Zavdi, B'Shem Rabbi Chia bar Abba Omar, Kana, when you buy new garments, or what's for you a new garment, indeed you make, Baruch Shechiyanu V'Kimanu V'Giyanu L'Zman Hazeh. However, in contrast, if you didn't buy it, but Nitan Loi means you received it as a gift, you make the Hatoiva HaMeitiv. Now comes the kasha, hold on. If someone gives me a gift, why should I make Hatoiva HaMeitiv? Following the Pnei Moshe. We're learning here like the Bible. It's garments for me. The Rosh is something beautiful. In other words, Hatoiva HaMeitiv is when it's good for me and for someone else. The Rosh says, and this is so emes, that people want to feel like they're contributing. People want to feel like a giver. So when you receive something, you know what you're giving? You're giving the giver the feeling, the experience of him being a giver. Guys, fundraise. You'll see what I mean. The recipient is giving more than the giver. That guy wrote $1 million, and the Meshulach is explaining to him, I'm giving you more than you're giving me. So it's I'm receiving, and I'm giving you the hana of you being a giver. And not only is that true if the recipient is an ani, no, the recipient can be an usher. Even more, that you, the giver, you are able to give hana to even a gvir by giving. Today you have the biggest givirim in the world, they become the biggest fundraisers. And you're giving them for Shteit Gavalik. So that's the way the Rosh explains the Hatoiv Amit. Says the Gemara, Rabbi Ba, who is the father of Rabba Mari, in the name of Rabbi Acha, says similar, when you acquire something, when kana, then you make the baruch. Again, interestingly, just the way the nusach changes, right? He's skipping the words, he's abbreviating. However, Nitan Loi, he also agrees, then you make a hatoiva hamete. But he adds something. Now it's a gavaldik thing. Let's speak dafka about garments. What happens if we're speaking about buying a garment? Every day in the morning we make birchas hashachar. One of the brachas that we make is mal b'sharum. So it was said in the name of Rabbi Acha, if you buy a garment today, 10 a.m., 4 p.m., if you wear it on the day that you bought it, when you put it on, aside of the shechiyanu, you make baruch at Hashem Elokeinu melech haolam mal b'sharum. In other words, if I buy a new garment today, but I don't put it on today, by the time tomorrow comes, I already made tomorrow morning again the birchas hashachar. Then you don't have to make it. But when I made birchas hashachar when I wake up. I made birchas hashachar. So the mal b'sharumim didn't only go on this suit that I'm wearing. It goes on all of the garments that I own. God gave me the ability to cover my nakedness by giving me a look at my closet. Look at your wife's closet. And Baruch Hashem. But if she buys a new garment, the new garment was not included in the mal b'sharumim that she made this morning. Yechab? Okay. So she puts it on the day that she bought it. She makes a mal b'sharumim. Yeah. I'm excited. Bite it. And now,
does anybody actually hold of this, Rabbi?
We don't pass in that way. And more than that, it's very rare that we make a shechiyanu. However, especially when many men are becoming more women-like nowadays. So if they buy a suit and they're taket b'simcha gedolah, they should make a shechiyanu. I mean, it depends on the person. It depends on the person. It really. One thing is clear, that the fact that we make a shechiyanu on Yontif, on a beged chodosh, means there is a certain amount of simcha. You have to know how to relate to it. Yadinish benafshi, what can I tell you? When you're buying the Amazon a $20 pair of pants, no one is making a shechiyanu. All right? When your wife buys a 10,000 shetel, you make a dain ha'emes. For you. Obviously, you have to know, everyone has their own bracha. When she puts it on, she'll put it on, she'll make a toiva meitiv because it's good for her, and she gave you the opportunity to show how much you love her by first days. You on the other hand, okay, now comes another anayis, and this is unique to the Yerushalmi, which is mamash amazing, and that is that we make birchas hamitzvos. We're going to birchas hamitzvos. Before we were speaking about mal sharumim is brachas of shevach. By birchas hamitzvos, we make the bracha only for the mitzvah. Almost every mitzvah needs preparation. As an example, sukkah. God gives me a mitzvah to live in a sukkah for 7 days. Basukah station. For me to live in a sukkah, I have to have a sukkah. For me to have a sukkah, you got to build a sukkah. Now, emes, I don't have to build a sukkah. I can live in your sukkah if you allow me. Sukkah she'ula is kosher. But I'm building a sukkah for me. The Yerushalmi holds that building of the sukkah, the hechsher mitzvah, is choshev enough that you can make, and therefore you should make a bracha of ha'oisa sukkah la'atzmai omer baruch Hashem Elokeinu melech haolam baruch Hashem asher kedishanu b'mitzvos v'tzivanu la'asoi sukkah. Wow. Not because it says Chag HaSukkah is tasa l'cha. No. There's The word, there's a Sikha, Nekuta Sichas Chelik Zayin, Kedoshim Dalet. The Rebbe explains a whole Lishitosayu of the Rashi and Tosfos and Amam and the Raivet. And the crux is that the Chashivus of the mitzvah leads into the Hechsher mitzvah. Well, God commanded me to live in the sukkah, but included in that command is for people to build a sukkah. And therefore, the building of the sukkah itself, which is a Hechsher mitzvah, is imbued not only as a Hechsher mitzvah, it's imbued with the mitzvah itself. Af tzvas b'tzvas asuyim. La'achedim. Now another nuance. When I build a sukkah for someone else, so the Yerushalmi holds, again, not only they make a bracha for Hechsher mitzvah, but now we're going into another huge topic, and that's called Kol Yisrael Arevim Zelozeh, which mamash means that even though I have my sukkah, I am responsible to see to it that you should have your sukkah. And therefore, if I build your sukkah, I make Baruch Atah Hashem Elokeinu Melech Haolam Asher Kiddishanu b'mitzvaysav v'tzivanu lasos loi sukkah lishmai. In other words, I'm building it to help you do your mitzvah. And that demands a mitzvah. If we would paskin like that, then Lubavitchers would be the ones who make the most brachas. When we put on, in other words, when we would put on tefillin on another Jew, according to this, you would make a bracha aside of them making a bracha. Because I am fulfilling my duty, my obligation, my merit of I'm responsible for you. Gavaldi. Now, separate to that, says Gemara continues, Nichnas leishava. When you enter the sukkah, that's the mitzvah proper. Another detail. It's amazing how many details we have. How often do you have to make a leisha basuk? So our Gemara holds. Now, I want to say right now that really in the Bavli, it's a machlekes Rabbi Yechanan and Shmuel, and we actually don't we don't paskin. We don't paskin like Shmuel. We don't paskin like the Yerushalmi. In the Yerushalmi, they don't even bring a machlekes. In the Bavli, the question is: do you make it every time? We make it every time with nuances. And the Yerushalmi says, no, you don't make it every time. But you make it every time. You're obligated to live in the sukkah for 7 days, uninterrupted. Unlike a lulav you're not allowed to take at night. The mitzvah of lulav is only by day. So if there's a mitzvah that you fulfill, and then there is a period of time in which you cannot fulfill it, then when you do it again, you make another bracha. Every day you make another bracha, which is what we do, which is what everyone agrees to. By the sukkah, the Yerushalmi holds that mishu hu mevarach alel leil yom tov rishon. Once you made the bracha on the first night, you don't have to make a bracha b'chlal, because the mitzvah is upon me for 7 days. I walked out, doesn't matter. L'mashal birchas haTorah. Birchas haTorah, we make it once in the morning. I know it's not a great example because we don't make it once for our entire life, but why don't we have to make it every time you learn again? When you have a meal, you make a bracha before you eat breakfast, and then you make a bracha before you eat dinner. By birchas haTorah, we don't say that. You made a bracha in the morning, it's good for the whole day. Not because I'm learning the whole day, because since I have to learn the whole day, the obligation keeps me connected to that activity. Here, the mitzvah straight for 7 days, you only make it once. Now, continues the Braisa, Mei Atom, based on the rule, many rules. Rule number 1 is that Hechsher mitzvah demands a bracha. So when you make a lulav, making a lulav means binding the lulav. And even though when it comes to the binding, it's crazy. We have really a machlokes. Remember, Chachamim and Rabbi Yehuda, I think, whether you're obligated to do igud, whether it's only a mitzvah min hamubchar, hiddur mitzvah, whatever. I forgot the exact lashon. The Yerushalmi is saying that when you make the lulav, when you bind the lulav, you make the bracha baruch atah Hashem Elokeinu melech haolam asher kiddishanu says mitzvah no lasois lulav for the binding. And let's go weiter. Arvus lasois la'acher. Then you make asher kiddishanu says mitzvah no lulav lishmai. Now, aside of that, another detail, you have to make a shechiyanu. Now, what's interesting is that for some reason, when it came to the sukkah, we didn't have the shechiyanu. Even though we make the shechiyanu on the sukkah, which is why we make this big, we spoke it out just a few daf ago, right? That there's a difference in the seder of the kiddush, the first night of sukkahs, to the seder of the kiddush, the second night of sukkahs. We make shechiyanu on both nights. but we make the Shechiyanu on the first night at the end. Because we want the Shechiyanu not only to go on the Kid Yontav, we also want it to go on the Sukkah. And then Shechiyanu. On the second night of Sukkah, first we make the Shechiyanu, and then we make a Leisha Basur. But here, in this Braisa, Shechiyanu is connected to Lulav. Now, unlike the Sukkah, which our Braisa holds, you make a bracha once for the whole 7 days, because since there is no mitzvah night, so it's not incumbent on me direct for the 7 days. Every time I do it, I make another bracha. Let's go further. Guys, this is huge. Now, again, some people hold that since it says uchsaftam, the mitzvah is to write it. We're not going to learn just pshat over here. We're going that it's all the same nekuda, that you make a bracha for a hechsher mitzvah. The mitzvah is to affix a mezuzah, to affix it. But I have to write a mezuzah. Is that the mitzvah? No, but it's preparing for the mitzvah. So the chashivus of the mitzvah itself bleeds into, takes over the hechsher mitzvah. Asher kidishanu b'mitzvaysav v'tzivanu. Wow, lasos mezuzah. But when I make it for someone else because of arvos, lasos mezuzah l'shmai. Kishuhu kaiva. When you affix it, then you make barachata. Asher kidishanu b'mitzvaysav al mitzvahs mezuzah. Now, lahoyer guys like this in Psachim. I know the Gemara there is speaking about Mila that we'll have soon, because as we know, some people say al mitzvahs mezuzah. Who knows what bracha do we make? We say the words likvoya mezuzah. In the Gemara, I'm not saying halach. In the Gemara Psachim, by Mila, al mitzvahs Mila or lamul. The Gemara gives a klal. Psachim bavli dav zayin. That if I am fulfilling the mitzvah myself, when a father is being mal a son, which is the ideal mitzvah, he says lamul. When you have someone else doing it for him, even though the shlichas al gutazachin, you do al mitzvahs Mila. I'm speaking Gemara, I'm not speaking halacha. Based on that Gemara, if I'm putting a mezuzah in my house, I would say l'kvay mezuzah. If I'm putting out a mezuzah in your house, I would say al mitzvahs mezuzah. That's the rule the Gemara gave over there. Okay, right. Making tefillin means again, whether it's writing it, whether it's binding the boxes together, tying it up. When you make it for someone else, you make al mitzvahs tefillin. Guys, on daf chaf aleph in the Oiz V'Hadar, in the Gemaras that we're using. Daf chaf aleph, we actually had, if you remember, 2 girsois. And according to one girsa, even on the Yerushalmi, it matched with the Babli, which is that on the yad you make lahaniach. But the girsa that we had in the Gemara on Daf Chaf Aleph was that on the yad you make al mitzvahs tefillin. The point the Braisa is making, which is actually the way we paskin, is that if you're not mafsik between the yad and the roish, you only make one bracha. That's the point. You only make one bracha for tefillin, which is a big machlekes. Anyways, that's the way we do it. Again, when you're nodding the tzitzis, la'acher v'chulei nisatev asher shom zvanu lisatev batzitzis. Another example. When you take up trumas from meises, you say asher shom zvanu lahafrosh truma meises. That's the mitzvah. That's not the hechsher mitzvah. La'acher, that's the point. Lahafrosh truma meises l'shmoi. Hashoichet tzarich loimer barachato Hashem Elokeinu melech haolam asher shom zvanu al hashchita. And I want you to know that just like we had it, this is all from Psachim. By Mila we said, Likvoya al mitzvahs. By Shchita, it depends whether it's Achilas Rishus versus if you're shechting your own carbon, the Mashiach will come, we're building the Beis HaMikdash, and when you shech the carbon of the Beis HaMikdash, you don't say al Shchita, you say Lishchai, because there's a chiyuv to shech the carbon, when we're bringing a carbon that you're obligated to bring. Al Shchita means if you want to eat, you have to shech. We're good. That's tzaddik aleph on this. Hamachase, when you cover the blood. Now, guys, when you shecht a behema, there is no mitzvah to cover the blood. But when you shecht a chaya or a bird, as we know today from Kaparis, there's an obligation to cover the blood. You don't have to cover all of the blood. You have to cover some of the blood, and you make a bracha. Al kisui hadam. If you remember, what do we say? Al kisui dam ba'of. And we have a different nusach, but that's the nusach over here. Ha-mol. This is speaking about when the father is not the moil. Again, we're aligning as much as we could the babbling and the Yerushalmi. Now, after the moil makes the al hamila, this is the way we do it, the way Ashkenazim do it. Then the Adiyah ben Omer Baruch means Baruch Ata Hashem Elokeinu melech haolam asher kiddushanu v'mitzvanu la'achniso bevrisa shel Avram Avinu. Ulahoir, that we're going to learn in a moment, unique in the Yerushalmi. When a bracha is made, when do we make brachas hamitzvahs? In the Babli, over la'asiyos. Over means koidem. The Gemara over there says, why do we use the word over? We have, I think, 3 sources where we find in scripture that the word over means koidem. What koidem means prior. In the Bible, in Yerushalmi, only in the Yerushalmi do we bring Shitas Rav Huna that you make it while you're doing it. But let's go the way we pass it. A bracha has to be made prior. And that's the way the moil. When does the moil makes the bracha? Al Hamila. And then he cuts off the arla. Then after the moil makes the bracha, the father makes the bracha. But here comes a kasha. When does the father make the bracha chaps? We're speaking about the way the Gemara is saying it, which is what Ashkenazim do. After the cut was made. But there's a problem. Don't you have to make a bracha over la'asiyasan? Guys, this is classic. These are the classic things you should know. So there's 3 approaches. Approach number 1 is that the moil is acting on behalf of the father because the obligation is really on the father. Today, in many by us, right, the moil will give the father the knife and he'll tell you, give me the knife. You're giving him your knife and you appoint him to be his shliach. Another approach is that the mitzvahs mila is priya, mila and priya. So even though the moil did the cut of the arla, since the halach is that if you didn't do priya, it's keilu you did no mila. The father's bracha is before you do priya. Just these are the known classic answers, is that the bracha of the moil is about a mitzvah. The mitzvah is al hamila. What is the father saying? Does it say anywhere in the Torah that we are obligated to bring our child bevrisa shel Avraham Avinu? That's not a brachas hamitzvahs. That's a bracha of shevach hanedah. And actually, when it comes to a bracha of thanksgiving, the norm is that you make the thanksgiving after the fact. I know Hasidim, if you really are mahal thereby and you have so much emunah, you can make a thank you before it happens. When you fundraise, don't do it. Just a rule. Because when you thank the guy before he gave the money, for giving the money, you're manipulating him. Many times it can backfire. Let the guy give the check, and then you say thank you. No, it's birchas shevach is la'achar ha'maisa, so it fits. So this is, we're thanking God for giving us. We're praising God that we had the opportunity to bring our child. That's not Ashek Kedushan of a mitzvah. It fits. The moil makes it over la'asiyasa. The brach of the father, which is birchas shevach v'noah, is done. And these are the 3 classic approaches that are there. And look at the difference between the nusach in the Yerushalmi versus the Babli. We say the nusach on the Babli, right? We say kishem shenichnas labris ken yekones. Nichnas means just entered, so shall he enter. Who entered? The baby. Now, did the baby enter? The Yerushalmi holds the baby didn't enter. The baby is 8 days old. He didn't. He was brought in. He was brought in. So, in other words, we're saying now, kshem shehichnastoi. I don't know what the Sfardim say, but that's a big, now you see the difference. Kshem shehichnastoi labris, just like we're speaking to the father, to the moyel, that we brought the child in, kein tachniseyu, maybe this is to God, so shall you bring him in, l'toiro l'chuppah. Interesting, there's no masam tovim. I'm not even talking about that, but there's a big difference whether you are focusing on the ones who brought him in, which would make sense on one level because he's a baby, but you're saying in the future he should be brought in. When you go to the chuppah, you think you made a choice to go to the chuppah. You think it was your choice. You were brought in. That's the emes. That's if you're enlightened. If you're living in darkness, that means you have an ego. In the Babli, just like I'll enter. One is on the person, one is on God. One is on the ego, one is on the emes. Gavaldi. Okay. Now, Hamavarech, another detail. Now that we're speaking about a bris milah. So there's a whole bracha that we give. We give a bracha before we give the name. What's the nusach of the bracha? Hamavarech tzarech loim. Baruch means Baruch Ata Hashem Elokeinu Melech Haolam Asher Kiddash or Kiddesh Yedid Mi Beten. Now, just to know the pshat, which Yedid was sanctified Mi Beten, Yitzchak Avinu. That's the pshat. Was Avram Avinu Taka had a covenant, but he was 99 years old. Even and Yishmael was 13. But who was sanctified Mi Beten? Yitzchak Avinu. That's the pshat of the bracha. And v'choik b'she'eroi sam. Again, we're speaking about the bris l'shmoinas yom. Ben Shmoinas Yamim Kashet Tziva Oisrael like him. No, we say that a lot. V'tzetzov and all of the descendants of Yitzchak ben Yaakov, Chosam ba'ois bris kodesh. We seal him with this holy covenant. And al kain b'schar zois kail chai chalkeinu sureinu tzivo lahatzil yididu shereinu meshachas. God commanded that his beloved should be saved from destruction the night before the bris. Well, some people learned the Zohar the night before the bris, that Avraham Avinu was sitting at the gates of Gehenna, and anyone that has a bris on his flesh, any woman that brought her son to the bris, Avraham Avinu does not allow them to go into Gehenna. Avraham Avinu is sitting on the portals of Miami, and he doesn't allow us to get in there. Avraham Avinu, there you go. In other words, that's how great the bris is. This is a brach of Sheva. And Baruch Ato Hashem, that you are the one that established this covenant with us. Okay, after all of that, so some of it was a Baruch of Sheva. Here we're also speaking about Berachas HaMitzvahs. And again, this is unique in the Yerushalmi. If you ask a Bavli, when do you make a bracha? He'll say, Oiver la'asiyas. We're speaking about Berachas HaMitzvahs. Berachas HaMitzvahs and Berachas HaNen. Oiver means right before. Here we have a machlokes. Mitzvahs, we're not going to focus on the hand. We're speaking about mitzvahs, Berachas HaMitzvahs. Rabbi Yochanan Amar, and so we paskin, and that's the only shita in the Babli. Oiver la'asiyasim. Vayoratz hakushi. I forgot the oiver. That's one of the psukim the Gemara brings over there that we find in scripture that oiver means before. However, Rav Huna says no. B'shas hasiyas. Why? While you're doing it, not before. And look at the Pnei Moshe. The Pnei Moshe gives a logic. The top Pnei Moshe. You'll make a bracha levatal. See, when it comes to birchas hanehenin, you can have the same kasha. How you're holding the apple? Maybe after you make the bracha, the apple will fall out of your hand. Good. So what's the alternative? To make it when it's in your mouth, you're not allowed to do that. We learned this in the Gemara, right? Kolat smoisai termana. You can't talk when something is in your mouth. There's Yamalipiti losa. And the Buddha Secha goes on amen, but could be Yamalipiti Secha goes on that also. Masha'enkin, when you're doing a mitzvah, right? According to him, while you're putting on the tefillin, your hands are doing the mitzvah. Your mouth can be making a bracha. To take away that 1 in a million that you'll make the bracha with the best intent, and then for some reason the mitzvah will slip away from you. Says the Gemara that Asya the Rafuna Kishmu. That I want you to know that Rafuna is not standing alone. We find the same thing said by Shmuel. The Amar Rabbi Yosi Berebi Bun in the name of Shmuel. Kol Hamit Bracha. Look at this expression. Bishas asiyos. And now we're going to learn exceptions. And by the way, the exceptions aren't only l'Rafun. The exceptions is also l'Rabbi Yochanan. What we are bringing this Shmuel is just that the word over la'asiyasan, but b'shas asiyos. So one example will be tkiya. And by the way, tkiya will be the same logic. That tkiya, like eating, you do tkiyos with the mouth. How can you make a birchas hamitzvahs? You're not doing it with your hands. So that's why. So he'll be minded that you can't make the bracha while you're doing it because you're blowing. So he'll be minded that by Tchiyah Shofar, when would you make it? Right before, the way we do it. Another example will be tefillah. Now tefillah is already a whole new ball game. Tefillah, even though we're going to begin with the ger, and then the Charedim says we go from the ger to everyone else. A ger who's about the final step. I mean, the gerus is Kabbalas HaMitzvahs, but pre-gerus is Milah and Tefillah. And we do it in that order. So he does a bris Milah. Whenever it heals, he goes to the mikvah. And how can a ger make the bracha prior to going to the mikvah when he's not a Jew yet? How can he say Asher Kedushanim b'mitzvahs v'tzivano when he's not commanded? So he actually doesn't make it b'shas asiyas. You don't make it under the water. You make it when you leave the water. And lahoir stam another nukuda. When it comes to tefillah, we spoke about this when we learned the Rambam and many others, that the real tahara comes on the person when they emerge from the mikvah, not when they go under the water. When they go up from the water, he gets up from the water and he makes a bracha. Now that's not only by a ger, like the Pnei Moshe says. We want for all of the tefillahs to be the same. So when a woman goes to the mikvah, she does not make the bracha prior to her first tefillah. Now, it is common that when women go to the mikvah because of nida, I know that people have been hug to go many times. I'm not going to, God forbid, address that. Everyone should follow their minute. But the minimum, halachically, is 2 times. The minimum. Sometimes we don't advocate extra times because when you add, normally, you know what happens when you add? You never do it right. If a person goes to the mikvah, they go once under the water and they know this is it, they'll make a good tefillah. If a person is going under the mikvah many times, it's shaykh that because they're doing it again, they won't do it good now. When they go the second time, they're going to rely on the first time, and they'll never do it. By a woman who's in Ida, we don't go with that logic because of the bracha, because we don't want for her to make the bracha prior to the first time. B'tzad sheni, concept of making a bracha over la'asiyasa. So what happens is you go to the mikvah after the first tefillah, they cover the hair, right, and they make the bracha, and then they go again. By Ashkenazim, okay. I was never.
Before they even go into the pool.
Novaldik. Okay. Okay, very good. And anyways, the Charedim writes that since by again you can't make it before, v'lachein hiskinu b'chol hatfilah is levarach achar hatfilah. K'de isa babavli perekamet of Sachem l'das Rashi. And then he writes, Aval hagoinim, very good. That's Mamash Sfarda. The Rif and the Rambam, the Sfarda Shapoiskim, they hold betfilas ger bolvad, and not by Yanida. Very good. Okay, back inside the Gemara. And the Yesh that kiddushin b'be'ilah. Here we have a machlekes b'nei Moshe and the Charedim. We have another few minutes to go exactly what we're saying over here. So first of all, just to make it clear, Rav Mangid Aman the Mekadosh b'biyah. Even though the Mishnah says that a woman you can make kiddushin through kesef, shtar, and biyah. We don't do biyah, but when kiddushin was affected by biyah, today. Kiddushin b'biyah. We're speaking about kiddushin. In other words, man manged al man de mekadosh b'biyah, which means that today you mekadosh b'shavah kesef, not the kesef, b'shavah kesef. Before the man gives the ring, really the man has to make a bracha. So many details. Now, group. Not only since you're going to drink wine, you have to make a ber priyagov. Since the bracha is a long bracha, right? And not everyone knows the brachas, not to shame the one that doesn't know it. So someone else, who's called the Masader Kedushin, will make it for everyone, even for people who know how to make it. But the Birchas Edison is made prior to the Kedushin. If a person will be Mekadosh Bishtar, Birchas Edison will be done before you give the shtar. Before you give the shtar. Loha'ir, the reason why we are very makbid, not to do what the Litvish should do, which is that they give the ksuba with Edom. And now it's a new thing that they say, hey, no, I'm talking about giving of the ksuba, that they want the Edom to witness the ksuba. And there's a declaration that we should not do, that they say you do. Here, take your ksuba. We dafka don't do that, because that gives the appearance that you're being mekadosh with a document. You only have to have a day, a kiyum, for kedusha. A ksuba is a document of a debt. The edom that's signed, that's the birur. It's a bona fide document. But you read it under the chuppah stam. You read it to be mafsek between this part and that part, because they were separated. Bisman, Rashi says, make it go back to back, so you're mafsek. But in order for us not to have the delusion that the ksuba is kedushin, we dafka don't make declarations. Imagine you have Edom, Tini, Nembain Ksuba in front of Edom. It looks like you're being Makadisher again. It looks like you are invalid. Don't have Edom for the giving of the Ksuba. And we don't make any statements when the man gives the wife the Ksuba, he makes no statements. And more than that, if there's Chupas Nida, which is not that rare, it's quite common. So chupas nida, the man will place the ring on the woman's finger, even though she's a nida. He has to. He's being mekadosh. Hariyat nekudash li. He cannot give it to the rabbi to give it to her. If it's chupas nida, the man will not give the kala the ksuba. He'll give it to the rabbi to give it to her. I'm just pointing out. In other words, it's not kedushin. But coming back over here now, kedushin bebe'ilah, you can't make the bracha. Why can't you make the bracha? So the Charedim brings from the Ramban, guys. The Charedim is around 14 lines from the top, because not like the Sfardim that are comfortable to make a bracha a bit before. Here we hold you have to make the bracha right before, even if not b'shas ma'aser. like Rabbi Yechanan, right before you're not garbed. You can wear your garments. That's not the way a man should have be'ilah with his wife. Brings it's since right before you can't make it. That's why the Charedim learns that kiddushin be'ilah you don't make the bracha before. Says the Pnei Moshe. He gives a better reason. We're not speaking about a couple. We're speaking about you're being mekadosh bebiyah. She might say no. The Pnei Moshe is l'shitase. How can you make a bracha? See, before you give a woman money, she's not going to say no. She'll say yes. I mean, that you can ask the same kasha on the ring. You're doing beer, she might say ich will nicht. So therefore, you can't make the bracha before. You have to make the bracha afterwards. How great is that? Amar Rabbi Yoina, I have another one. Is loch. You have to always add an aleph in the Yerushalmi, right? It's like ached. So choyroi, which is tefillin shel yad, at shelo yachaloitz. Wow. So guys, well, let me go. We are already late. That tefillin, guys, we learned in Yerushalmi. We don't do it. That when you take off your tefillin, remember that? Daf chaf aleph. What bracha do you make? Because since tefillin is not allowed to be worn at night, so you're obligated to take it off before the night. There's some machlekes what that means, but we're going with the Yerushalmi. Goes only during the daytime. So you make a bracha when you remove the hand tefillin. So when do you remove it? Not prior to removing it. You make the bracha after you removed it. Because when are you? That will be the exception that he's asking, that he's adding. Why? Now, why? Why do you make it before? He says, Gavaldik the Charedim. Because when you're making the bracha lishmar chukav, I know the pshat is, the choik means, God says, according to this sheet, that you're not allowed to wear tefillin at night. But there's a machlekes about that. We don't paskin that way. The Yerushalmi holds you're not allowed to wear tefillin at night. The Charedim adds that the lishmar means that we're obligated to guard the tefillin. In a kiss, we're obligated to, not just to remove it and to guard it. So before you removed it, you didn't begin guarding it yet. You over la'asiyasin means not 20 minutes before. Before, when you remove it, before you put it into the bag, that's when you make the bracha. And just to conclude the Amid, to conclude the daf, the Gemara says, hold on. Why didn't Rabbi Yoina speak about the bracha when it comes to tefillin shel rosh? Why did he only mention tefillin shel yad? The shel rosh, a question mark. The Gemara says, I'll tell you why. Because you never removed the shel rosh last. No. When you remove the tefillin, what tefillin is always last? The shel yad. Says the Gemara, no, because lo yeva. Min the yeva, ha yeva. In other words, tefillin shel yad has to be put on before the shel rosh. When you remove the tefillin, you have to remove the tefillin shel rosh first. What's the source of that? Not only because in the Chumash, the Seder is Yad and Rosh, not only that, we learned this above, because it says, V'hoyu l'teitafas beinenecha, v'hoyu means let them be tefillin of the head. If it's the head, it has to be them. Ubepnimi is because the head comes after your hand. Action is supreme. If you're doing, then you can be a big thinker. To be a thinker without doing was like the ganze thinking. So therefore, when Rabbi Yoina was speaking about the other exception, he's only going to speak about the shel yad because he's emphasizing you make the bracha after you remove it. What will be the last part of the tefillin remove? The tefillin shel yad. To be continued.